All right, family, before we get started, we have some announcements, some clarities and things like that. Today, first of all, I'm not kidding you. Today is one of those shows that if you've missed every episode, I really truly mean this. You really want to tune in. This is one of those episodes that for me brought me back to my why. It brought me back to the understanding and meaning of why I do this in so many words. But first, let's pay some bills. So make sure that you are sharing this content with your friends, family, loved ones that need some inspiration, and just not that rah 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 stuff, but actually some information that they can utilize and start implementing in their life today. As you know, in the opening credits, we always talk about it's not really about the inspiration and motivation. It's about the self-discipline, which is a creation of habits and routines. So make sure, family, you are sharing this information. If you are listening on your favorite podcast, whether that's Apple, Sketcher, Google, whatever it is that you're listening to me on, please subscribe, leave some great feedback. I mean, if you leave negative feedback on something that someone's trying to inspire you on, I don't know, maybe I don't even know how to respond to that, but I digress. If you're listening on YouTube, look, you probably listened to a couple videos by now. I want you to just go ahead and subscribe. And while you're subscribing, share this with somebody that you think that can use, that are up against some challenges in their lives, that they can really use this, and let them know that I'm not your typical speaker, because I'm somebody that's in the journey with you. I'm not above you. We are aligned. I just happen to be in a position with the mic right now, but this mic can be handed to you, to anyone. So please, if you're listening to on YouTube, go in the description. Share this information, click share, click like, and I think that's about it. I know there's some questions out there about, okay, well, I want to understand the consistency. So family, real quick as well, I am doing the show Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Yes, I have a set schedule now. It's not that, I just blown up so fast. It's just the fact that I am also working on a newsletter, because I want to put together a newsletter. So I'm starting that process and understanding what is required, what's needing. Also, I am also taking on a new endeavor of another passion of mine, which is sneakers, as you kind of fully aware, and I'm recording that journey and having to do editing and having to learn the whole editing game, which that skill set will be able to transfer over into this. Now, I know I said a lot, but today, for real, family, I'm super excited. I'm pumped about this new schedule of doing Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. The reason why that I was posting, or I should say recording 5 days a week, sometimes 4 days a week. And there's the reason why I was doing that is pumping out so much material and content, because if you don't realize it or not, I really want to truly be the best. And I know you have to practice and practice and practice, but then you get to a point where you have to start navigating away from focusing on quantity and start focusing on quality. So as you can see, I'm starting to add music and sound and things like that. And I need to continuous grow. We are in season 2. So it's important. Matter of fact, it's imperative that I continue to grow, that you continue to grow with me, family, because it doesn't make sense to continue to stay where I am. So 3 days a week, family. And if possible, I would like to do 4. But for now, just so, as Tyler Perry talks about spreading yourself too thin, when he talked about if you had all of these seeds and you're watering all these various seeds versus just focusing on this little batch of seeds or seed, then you won't be as prosperous or as successful because you're all over the place. So I'm trying to minimize my all over the place and narrow it down where everything that I'm working on is a build off or is building off of each other in a sense. So as you know, I'm doing the sneaker deal, and when I say sneaker deal, meaning building out that side of the business and creating that particular product. But again, I know you're here for your inspiration, your motivation with some various steps, and really to shake you up and put you back into order. I'm telling you, we have a true banger. And reason why this is a banger, reason why I know this is going to arrest someone's attention, I'll give you a minute to get the Kleenex, because some of the things I'm going to say, they're going to touch your soul. They're going to erupt or disrupt your way of thinking. On IG, if you're not following me on IG, Impact Secret Podcast, follow me on there. One of the biggest things is I'm constantly working, not just on you, family, as well as myself, of constantly breaking limited beliefs. This episode is dedicated to breaking limited beliefs. So, with no further ado, let's jump right into it.
Not enough to have a great idea and the focus and the conscientiousness to see it to fruition. You must have the strength and the resolve and the courage to pursue that idea even when the rest of the world thinks you're insane. Time and time again, if you look at the stories of extraordinarily important entrepreneurs, there is almost always a moment when they are the only ones who believe in the value of what they're doing. You know, I tell in my book the story of my book, David and Goliath, the story of Ingvar Kamprad, the guy who founds IKEA. And the crucial moment in the story of IKEA is when he faces a boycott from the other furniture manufacturers in Sweden, and he's about to go out of business. And in desperation, he moves his operations across the Baltic Sea from Sweden to Poland and sets up shop in Poland. And that's what IKEA is. IKEA is essentially furniture shipped flat, made in Poland. That's the original elevator pitch for IKEA. What's interesting about that is he does it in 1961. At the height of the Cold War, at a time when East and West, communist world and free world are closer to outright war than at any other time in history, a guy living in the West, Sweden, crosses the pond to Poland, the Iron Curtain, and sets up shop. You cannot imagine what a controversial move that was. That would be like Walmart opening operations in North Korea. Literally, it's on that level of kind of eyebrow raising, you've got to be kidding me, who is this guy kind of thing. But he does it, and he persists, and he turns his back on all those critics. Why? Because he is a deeply disagreeable person. Didn't need people to agree with him, right? And that's how he's able to build IKEA into this extraordinary runaway success story. That's very hard to do. As human beings, we are hardwired to want the approval of our peers. So I wanted to tell a story that really obsessed me when I was writing my new book. And it's a story of something that happened 3,000 years ago when the kingdom of Israel was in its infancy. And it takes place in an area called the Shephelah in what is now Israel. And the reason the story obsessed me is that I thought I understood it, and then I went back over it and I realized that I didn't understand it at all. Ancient Palestine had along its eastern border, there's a mountain range, still same is true of Israel today. And in the mountain range are all of the ancient cities of that region. So Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Hebron. And then there's a coastal plain right along the Mediterranean where Tel Aviv is now. And connecting the mountain range with the coastal plain is an area called the Shephelah, which is a series of valleys and ridges that run east to west. And you can follow the Shephelah, go through the Shephelah to get from the coastal plain to the mountains. And the Shephelah, if you've been to Israel, you'll know it's just about the most beautiful part of Israel. It's gorgeous with forests of oak and wheat fields and vineyards. But more importantly, though, in the history of that region, it's had a real strategic function. and that is, it is the means by which hostile armies on the coastal plain find their way, get up into the mountains and threaten those living in the mountains. And 3,000 years ago, that's exactly what happens. The Philistines, who are the biggest of enemies of the kingdom of Israel, are living in the coastal plain. They're originally from Crete. They're a seafaring people. And they may start to make their way through one of the valleys of the Shephelah up into the mountains, because what they want to do is occupy the highland area right by Bethlehem and split the kingdom of Israel in two. And the kingdom of Israel, which is headed by King Saul, obviously catches wind of this, and Saul brings his army down from the mountains, and he confronts the Philistines in the valley of Elah, one of the most beautiful of the valleys of the Shephelah. And the Israelites dig in along the northern ridge, and the Philistines dig in along the southern ridge, and the two armies just sit there for weeks and stare at each other because they're deadlocked. Neither can attack the other, because to attack the other side, you've got to come down the mountain into the valley and then up the other side, and you're completely exposed. So finally, to break the deadlock, the Philistines send their mightiest warrior down into the valley floor, and he calls out and he says to the Israelites, "Send your mightiest warrior down, and we'll have this out, just the two of us." This was a tradition in ancient warfare called single combat. It was a way of settling disputes without incurring the bloodshed of a major battle. And the Philistine who's sent down, their mighty warrior, is a giant. He's 6'9". He's outfitted head to toe in this glittering bronze armor. And he's got a sword, and he's got a javelin, and he's got a spear. He is absolutely terrifying. And he's so terrifying that none of the Israelite soldiers want to fight him. It's a death wish, right? There's no way they think they can take him. And finally, the only person who will come forward is this young shepherd boy. And he goes up to Saul and he says, "I'll fight him." And Saul says, "You can't fight him. That's ridiculous. You're this kid. This is this mighty warrior." But the shepherd is adamant. He says, no, you don't understand. I have been defending my flock against lions and wolves for years. I think I can do it. And Saul has no choice. He's got no one else who's come forward. So he says, "All right." And then he turns to the kid and he says, "But you've got to wear this armor. You can't go as you are." So he tries to give the shepherd his armor, and the shepherd says no. He says, I can't wear this stuff. The biblical verse is, I cannot wear this, for I have not proved it. Meaning, I've never worn armor before. You've got to be crazy. So he reaches down instead on the ground and picks up 5 stones and puts them in his shepherd's bag and starts to walk down the mountainside to meet the giant. And the giant sees this figure approaching and calls out, "Come to me so I can feed your flesh to the birds of the heavens and the beasts of the field," right? He issues this kind of taunt towards this person coming to fight him. And the shepherd draws closer and closer, and the giant sees that he's carrying a staff. That's all he's carrying, right? Instead of a weapon, just this shepherd's staff. And he says, he's insulted. "Am I a dog that you would come to me with sticks?" Right? And the shepherd boy takes one of his stones out of his pocket, puts it in his sling, and whirls it around and lets it fly, and it hits the giant right between the eyes, like right here in his most vulnerable spot. And he falls down either dead or unconscious, and the shepherd boy runs up and takes his sword and cuts off his head. And the Philistines see this, and they turn and they just run. Right? And of course, the name of the giant is Goliath, and the name of the shepherd boy is David. And the reason that story has obsessed me over the course of writing my book is that everything I thought I knew about that story turned out to be wrong. Right? So David in that story is supposed to be the underdog, right? In fact, that term, David and Goliath, has entered our language as a metaphor for improbable victories by some weak party over someone far stronger. Now, why do we call David an underdog? Well, we call him an underdog because he's a kid, little kid, and Goliath is this big, strong giant. We also call him an underdog because Goliath is an experienced warrior, and David is just a shepherd, right? But most importantly, we call him an underdog because all he has is that Goliath is outfitted with all of this modern weaponry, right? This glittering coat of armor and a sword and a javelin and a spear, and all David has is this sling. Well, let's start there. with the phrase, all David has is this sling, because that's the first mistake that we make. In ancient warfare, there are three kinds of warriors. There's cavalry, men on horseback and with chariots. There's heavy infantry, which are foot soldiers, armed foot soldiers with swords and shields and some kind of armor. And there's artillery. And artillery are archers, but more importantly, slingers. And a slinger is someone who has a leather pouch with two long cords attached to it. And they put a projectile, either a rock or a lead ball, inside the pouch. And they whirl it around like this. And they let one of the cords go. And the effect is to send the projectile forward towards its target. Right? That's what David has. And it's important to understand that that sling is not a slingshot. It's not this, right? It's not a child's toy. It's, in fact, an incredibly devastating weapon. When David whirls it around like this, he's turning the sling around probably at 6 or 7 revolutions per second. And that means that when the rock is released, it's going forward really fast, probably 35 meters per second. That's substantially faster than baseball thrown by even the finest of baseball pitchers. More than that, the stones in the Valley of Elah were not normal rocks. They were barium sulfate, which are rocks twice the density of normal stones. If you do the calculations on the stopping power of the rock fired from David's sling, it's roughly equal to the stopping power of a 45 millimeter handgun, right? This is an incredibly devastating weapon. Accuracy, we know from historical records that slingers experienced slingers could hit and maim or even kill a target at distances of up to 200 yards. From medieval tapestries, we know that slingers were capable of hitting birds in flight. They're incredibly accurate, right? When David lines up, and he's not 200 yards away from Goliath, he's quite close to Goliath. When he lines up and fires that thing at Goliath, he has every intention and every expectation of being able to hit Goliath at his most vulnerable spot between his eyes. If you go back over the history of ancient warfare, you will find time and time again that slingers were the decisive factor against infantry in one kind of battle, against heavy infantry in one kind of battle or another. So what's Goliath? He's heavy infantry. And his expectation when he challenges the Israelites to a duel is that he's going to be fighting another heavy infantryman, right? When he says, "Come to me that I might feed your flesh to the birds of the heavens and the beasts of the field," the key phrase is "come to me." Come up to me, because we're going to fight hand to hand like this. Saul has the same expectation. David says, "I want to fight Goliath," and Saul tries to give him his armor, because Saul is thinking, oh, when you say fight Goliath, you mean fight him in hand-to-hand combat, infantry on infantry. But David has absolutely no expectation. No, he's not going to fight him that way. Why would he? He's a shepherd. He's spent his entire career using a sling to defend his flock against lions and wolves. That's where his strength lies. So here he is, this shepherd, experienced in the use of a devastating weapon, up against this lumbering giant, weighed down by 100 pounds of armor and these incredibly heavy weapons that are useful only in short-range combat. Goliath is a sitting duck. He doesn't have a chance, right? So why do we keep calling David an underdog, and why do we keep referring to his victory as improbable? It's a second piece of this that's important. It's not just that we misunderstand David and his choice of weaponry. It's also that we profoundly misunderstand Goliath. Goliath is not what he seems to be. There's all kinds of hints of this in the biblical text. Things that are, in retrospect, are quite puzzling and don't square with his image as this mighty warrior. So to begin with, the Bible says that Goliath is led onto the valley floor by an attendant. Now that is weird, right? Here is this mighty warrior challenging the Israelites to one-on-one combat. Why is he being led by the hand by some, young boy, presumably, to the point of combat? Secondly, the Bible story makes special note of how slowly Goliath moves. Another odd thing to say when you're describing the mightiest warrior known to man at that point, right? And then there's this whole weird thing about how long it takes Goliath to react to the sight of David. So David's coming down the mountain, and he's clearly not preparing for hand-to-hand combat, right? There is nothing about him that says, I'm about to fight you like this. He's not even carrying a sword. Why does Goliath not react to that? It's as if he's oblivious to what's going on that day. And then there's that strange comment he makes to David. Am I a dog that you should come to me with sticks? Right? Sticks? David only has one stick. Well, it turns out that there's been a great deal of speculation within the medical community over the years about whether there's something fundamentally wrong with Goliath, an attempt to make sense of all of those apparent anomalies. There have been many articles written. The first one was in 1960 in the Indiana Medical Journal. And it started a chain of speculation that starts with an explanation for Goliath's height. So Goliath is head and shoulders above all of his peers in that era. And usually when someone is that far out of the norm, there's an explanation for it. So the most common form of giantism is a condition called acromegaly. And acromegaly is caused by a benign tumor on your pituitary gland that causes an overproduction of human growth hormone. And throughout history, many of the most famous giants have all had acromegaly. So the tallest person of all time was a guy named Robert Wadlow, who was still growing when he died at the age of 24, and he was 8'11". He had acromegaly. Do you remember the wrestler Andre the Giant, famous? He had acromegaly. There's even speculation that Abraham Lincoln had acromegaly. Right? Anyone who's unusually tall, that's the first explanation we come up with. And acromegaly has a very distinct set of side effects associated with it, principally having to do with vision. The pituitary tumor, as it grows, often starts to compress the visual nerves in your brain, with the result that people with acromegaly have either double vision or they are profoundly nearsighted. Right? So when people have started to speculate about what might have been wrong with Goliath, they've said, wait a minute, he looks and sounds an awful lot like someone who has acromegaly. And that would also explain so much of what was strange about his behavior that day, right? Why does he move so slowly and have to be escorted down into the valley floor by an attendant? Because he can't make his way on his own, right? Why is he so strangely oblivious to David that he doesn't understand that David's not going to fight him until the very last moment? Because he can't see him, right? When he says, come to me that I might feed your flesh to the birds of the heavens and the beasts of the field, the phrase come to me is a hint also of his vulnerability. Come to me because I can't see you, right? And then there's, am I a dog that you should come to me with sticks? He sees 2 sticks when David has only 1. So the Israelites up on the mountain ridge looking down on him thought he was this extraordinarily powerful foe. What they didn't understand was that the very thing that was the source of his apparent strength was also the source of his greatest weakness. And there is, I think, in that a very important lesson for all of us. Giants are not as strong and powerful as they seem. And sometimes the shepherd boy has a sling in his pocket.
In 1980, an experiment of monkeys was made by a researcher who conducted a study on social dynamics. The researcher put 5 monkeys in a huge cage. At the top of the cage, he placed a bunch of bananas. Then a ladder was placed inside of the cage, leading to the bananas. The monkey saw the bananas and sent one of them up to get them. When the monkey got to the top and reached for the bananas, the scientist threw a stream of cold water on the monkey's face. Caught by surprise, the monkey scurried down the ladder. Then the scientist threw cold water on all of the monkeys. A little cold water in the face didn't entirely stifle their ambitions, so a few minutes later, the monkey sent another one up the ladder. Again, the scientist threw cold water on the monkey, and the monkey quickly climbed down the ladder. Once more, the cold water treatment was repeated for all monkeys. 10 minutes later, a third monkey attempted to climb the ladder, but the other monkeys, remembering the punishment that follows, beat up the ambitious monkey and didn't let him climb up. A few days later, the scientists removed one of the 5 monkeys and introduced a new monkey into the group. The new monkey saw the bananas and naturally, he attempted to climb the ladder. The original 4 monkeys grabbed him and beat him up. Then the second monkey was replaced with a new monkey. And again, the new monkey attempted to climb up. And the 3 original monkeys, together with the first new monkey, grabbed him and beat him up. That was impressive because the first new monkey was never given the cold water treatment, but he behaved like the other members of the group. Gradually, all monkeys were placed with new ones. The new monkeys continued the same treatment of any monkey who tried to reach the bananas. They would pull him off and beat him up, despite the fact that none of them experienced the cold water treatment. In the end, all the monkeys learned that they should never go for the bananas. You see what? This experiment describes perfectly how our society often reacts when someone attempts to break the rules and change them. Today's episode is entitled David and Goliath. The willingness to do things you are not prepared for. Again, David and Goliath, the willingness to do things you are not prepared for. Let's jump into today's show. If you're new to the Impact Secret Podcast show, welcome to the family. To my existing family, big up. As always, thank you for joining the show. On this podcast show, we shift the mindset through inspiration, motivation, with a standing foundation of self-discipline. I am your respectful host, ED. For all you smart and intelligent folks, it just simply means Ed. Now, you know the motto, the slogan that we live by here. Bet on yourself. You won't win unless you get in the game and play. A quote that I love and I'm going with that I hope you enjoy. You never know how strong you are until being strong is the only choice you have. Bob Marley. Another thing here that rocks a present here with us here at the Impact Secret Podcast show. Living means doing what you love to do, even if you have to fall to get back up. Man, I love that. One question, 2 thought-provoking statements. First question is this. What are your 5 stones? Again, what are your 5 stones? First thought-provoking statement. Fail. Yep, F-A-I-L, fail. But there's a kicker to that. We'll talk about that soon. Second thought-provoking statement, wearing other people's armor. Wearing other people's armor. Again, today's episode is entitled David and Goliath, the willingness to do things you are not prepared for. I like a quote by Kobe Bryant in memory of Kobe's birthday, which was yesterday. Kobe said, once you go through the process of trying to make those dreams a reality, you hit obstacles. And I think, unfortunately, because of the pressure or anxiety or responsibility, you kind of give up on those dreams. And somewhere along the line, you lose the imagination. I think it's important that you never lose that. You have to keep that. That's the most important thing. I never gave up on my dream. Okay, you don't like that one, that didn't move you, it moved me. But let me see what James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, he said, the teacher learns more than the student. The author learns more than the reader. The speaker learns more than the attendee. The way to learn is by doing. Where are you going, ED, with all of this? Where am I going with all of this? The reason why I love that story of David and Goliath, and I love how the speaker that you were listening to on the audio clip originally was Malcolm Gladwell. He's one of my favorite, and I do mean favorite author, has all of his books. And the reason why I loved the story of David and Goliath, because that is a story of how I compared my life, meaning that life to me was Goliath and I was David. I was constantly navigating through this thing we call life. I was constantly being told what I couldn't do more than what I could do and could become. See, what tends to happen, family, is that when you are in a state of mind of trying to figure out, and I don't care what age you are, because you will have different periods where you feel like I'm lost, I'm confused. I'll give you a perfect example. Let me unpack what I mean by that. When I decided to transition from doing shows every day to less doing, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, so I can understand another passion of mine, which are sneakers, and having to record the videos of me basically displaying the sneakers and showing. And I'll be honest with you, family, I was extremely nervous. And you're like, why? Why would you? See, it wasn't about being on camera. I wanted to be like everyone else that I look up to, or I should say that inspires me when it comes to sneakers, as far as watching their shows. But see, one thing that I forgot, and what happens, family, we do this a lot, and I share this through a lot of the shows here that people fall victim to. Anytime you go into anything new and you see the success of what someone has, you should never want to mirror that or copy that. You should want to take that experience and customize it to your own. See, if I would have done my homework, which I had ended up doing, is afterwards, after I had got over that nervousness, I said, let me go back and look at some of the people that inspired me to even want to go ahead and jump into the whole sneaker game. And I went back to their oldest videos, and I'm looking and I'm like, wow, okay, yeah, this is not what it looks like now. See, family, we get caught up in the now, the instant, the microwave, as my mom would say, the microwave version of life. And life doesn't work that way. Everything is a progression. Everything is a succession of moving forward step by step. You're not going to get it now. That's why I entitled this David and Goliath, and saying, in so many words, of saying the willingness to do things you're not prepared for. Anything that I've had an opportunity to get better at, anything that I've had an opportunity to learn and still working on mastering, is that I was thrown into that situation. When I became a project manager, I was thrown into the situation because the project manager, because there wasn't a project manager. And then I found out, I was like, wow, I like this. There was no rule books. There was no way about going to do it. It was about working on figuring out, how does this thing work? Started asking questions. The same thing when I got into doing the podcast. Yes, there's a lot of books out there, and I promise you, I attempted to try to read them and understand it, but it made no sense to me. It didn't make sense to me because I said, well, I don't understand that format, and that format I don't think is going to be a reflection of who I am. I'm going to step outside the box. I'm going to break the rules, and that's what I did. I don't know how many podcasts out there that you hear in which you have clips like that I bring that that is aligned with my message. And I'm going to be honest, where I got that from was a gentleman named Durant at Group 82. I basically took his model of what he said, hey, do this, and I took it and customized it to fit the journey that I'm on. And what I love about being able to customize and not steal and not borrow is the fact that it allows you to step into who you are meant to be, who you can be. And that's why when I said the acronym FAIL, I pulled that off of a Facebook post, and let me show you how it arrested my attention. The acronym was so cold. It was so moving. As I was preparing for the show, I noticed I noticed I was doing some homework, and I said, wow, let me go look at some of my quotes, because what I do is I keep quotes, and I actually took a course on learning how to read, not like literally like reading words, but how to be a better information taker, because there's so much information out there that you can read something. And if I asked you, hey, so tell me about this book, you probably couldn't give me an in-depth discussion about it unless you've just got done reading it, or and it depends on type of reader you are. If you're reading one book a year, then yeah, you probably can give me an in-depth conversation. But for me, my goal is to get to a point where I'm reading one book a week. I know, family, I'm a little crazy and deranged, but I want to be able to take that information and dial it down to have an understanding of how I can leverage it. And basically, the reason why I'm doing that is to be able to take shortcuts of successful people that I can add to my life, so I'll know, okay, I need to pivot here. Okay, nope, go forward here. Oh, nope, I need to do this over here. But anyway, reason why I found that quote, because I was going through a course I had took, which was Ryan, and he said, create a section in your note section, or use a Notion or something like that, to be able to refer to as a filing cabinet. So when you're putting together speeches or putting together content, you can refer back to. And so I referred back to this, and it blew me away, because I was like, oh, wow, I have forgot all about that. See, the acronym for FAIL of what I got off the Facebook post was first attempt in learning. Okay, you didn't get excited. Let me try it again. I said FAIL stood for first attempt in learning. See, I understood that school didn't teach us about the aspect of, when I'm talking school, I am talking all the way from elementary to high school, even college, did not impose or build upon the aspect of having the ability to fail. See, when you failed in that genre, or in that framework, you are considered a failure. But see, as we know, a failure is someone that gave up. A failure is somebody who quit going after it and getting after it. And so I realized that in this word failing is the word fail is an opportunity for you to learn, an opportunity for you to grow. And see, when we get into these situations, when we're David and the situation is Goliath, we give more credit, we give more creed, we give more accolades to something or someone that really does not deserve it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bust anyone's bubble. I didn't mean to be disrespectful, but we have to be careful who we're saluting. We have to be careful of who we are applauding and praising. I love in the Bible what it talks about. I think it's Mark 12 verse 9, where they they unpacked it so well. And where I originally heard this was through, if you don't know, I'm a huge Bob Marley fan, and where I first heard it was there. So etymologically, I tried to say the word etymologically, but it didn't come out right. It just sounded good in my mind, but it didn't come out right. But anyway, I digress. But reason why I loved what he said was in Mark 12:9, he said, the stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. And I'm not a builder, but if I was a builder, I do believe the cornerstone stone is one of the best part of the structure in order to hold up the actual structure. And see, instead of being a regular stone, see, when you are a cornerstone, there's something different about you. There's something unique about you. And see, I've been a cornerstone all my life. How many cornerstone people do I have out there in the family that's listening today? See, a cornerstone is somebody that has the ability to get back up after failure, or excuse me, after failing time and time again. And that's what's the challenge, and still keep a smile on your face. Family, it's not easy. I wish I could tell you it was. I wish I could tell you that that when you fail there, that it's gonna be all that's what you were looking for. It doesn't feel good. I don't care who you are. You can be the most positive person in the world. Failing does not feel good and exciting, but what it does do, it is the best teacher that anything or anybody can do for you. And so going back to my point of what I'm saying of, you have to be careful about how you're looking up to people, because of the fact of you are putting pressures on yourself that are not even there. You're creating a person that is not really of that person. That's what Malcolm Gladwell has said when he talked about, he said, when I was listening to, he said, when he started really going in depth and studying the story of David and Goliath, he realized he had it wrong. He said he had it wrong because when he unpacked the story, he realized that the strength of Goliath was really his weakness. I'll say that again. He said the strength of Goliath was really his weakness, because when he told David, come to me, and how dare you, would you treat me as a dog? And I'm paraphrasing because you have sticks. Sticks is a plural. So what that says is that he's seeing doubles, or he's seeing more than one. And when David, I don't know if he realized that, so I can't really say or not say, but just imagine if someone told you, well, this is the way it's all, oh, you're probably gonna get me started. This is the way that it's always been done. See, that when someone tells me that is one of my pet peeves, that I'm saying, well, I know where you've been at all your life. Because when someone tells you this is way it's always been done, what they're telling you is, I'm not open to change. What they're telling you is that there is no way that this can change. There is no way that this is going to get any better. And I'm like, oh, okay. You see, that's what Saul had told David. Hey, put on my armor. This is how it's always been done. When we have to fight, we put on this armor. And see, what we have to realize, family, if we're going to be rule breakers, and when I say rule breakers, I mean, of course, in a legitimate fashion. But what I'm saying is stepping outside of the mold, stepping outside of what someone described you or what they deem you as being, and you're not. You're more than that. So stop trying to please or agree with people that at the end of the day, when you find out that they really, truly don't have your best interest at heart. And you say, well, how do you discover that? Well, family, that's only something that time will tell. But if they are putting you on in a situation where they're on a pedestal and looking down to you, that will tell you everything that you need to know. So family, when I tell you this type of episode is really for that person or the people that are going through something, that is looking at something or someone as a that they won't be able to go through or go around. My cousin on my uncle's side would always say, if they won't let me in the front door, I'll go to the back door. If I can't get into the back door, I'll go through the window. If I can't get in the front back door or the window, then I'll start sending messages that, hey, somebody is looking for you. And when they come out, then I'll walk in. Okay, maybe I lost somebody. I'll move on because that was kind of quick and fast. But what I'm trying to tell you, family, is when you're trying to wear other people's armor, you're trying to be somebody that you're not. I remember, as I told you, when I first started, because I was inspired by Eric Thomas, I wanted to be Eric Thomas. And when I remember I was listening to one of his videos, and he said, some of you been listening to me for a while and you haven't taken any action. And see, family, this is when I'm living in this 700 square foot apartment. And, he said, some of you listen to me and you haven't taken any action. And I'm paraphrasing, family. But you guys need to turn me off and get to work. And that's what I believe, family, that we need to do. Is it's all about action, being actionable, because when you're more in an actionable state, you're going to learn more. When I got into the sneaker game, I didn't read everything at first. I started just taking action, and then I started reading as much, material as I could. Even with this podcast, like now, when I got started, I attempted to read, and that's what taught me that, hey, just jump in and just start doing and listening to other podcasts to see, is there anything that can inspire you? Is there anything that you can utilize or mirror to customize for your own show as you're building it up? Because this is not going to happen overnight. There's going to take time. And family, we've been in this for about a year and a couple months, and I'm still willing and excited about each time I get on the mic to get better. So I'll leave you with these thoughts, family. There's a great opportunity for you to get better each day. It's just the decision that you have to make. It's the decision of what you want to do. Because I also like with Kevin Durant, and I'm actually going to do an episode of that, of Draymond Green's show, The Chips, when Draymond asked him a question about the media. And he said at first, when he came into the league, he really thought the media had knew more than what he did. But then over time, he started realizing that, wait a minute, I'm actually playing this game. I'm actually living this day in and day out. How would they know more than me? And when you get caught up, when you start talking and dealing with people that give you a lot of theories but have nothing actionable to back it up, when they give you feedback and thoughts and they don't show you, and they can't show their work, as one of my favorite books, I forgot his name, the author, I know that's bad. I think it's Ashton or something like that. And they can't show your work. Why do you get emotionally engaged in that? You should just say, oh, okay, thank you, and keep it moving. Because if they can't show your work, how are they going to teach you how to show your work? Because they're giving you theories. All right, family, I kept you too long. I appreciate today. I hope and I pray truly that this show really impact someone's life. See, family, it's not just something to get inspired or to get motivated. It's really to create a conversation in which you start taking actionable steps. Start, if that thing that you're scared or you're fearful of doing, or if it's creating a business, if it's, whatever it is, long as legitimate. I always got to clarify that, but jump into it. Because the only way you're going to learn or be is to do it. I don't care what, you can read every book you want to, but if not reading the book and not taking actionable steps and not having the faith, and you may learn, hey, I don't like this thing. Yeah, it sounded good listening to it, or it sounded good when I was reading it, but actually doing it, it just is just not for me. That's the same thing when you will realize where a lot of people, you'll go to college and people would think, oh, well, yeah, this is my major. And then they'll get out of college and go work in the real world and say, oh, you know what, I don't like doing this. And unfortunately, now you have to figure out, what do you enjoy doing? That's why I'm a big proponent of experimenting with things that intrigue you, or that you say, you know what, I wouldn't mind trying that. Go and do it. See if you like it. That way you'll know faster than actually just reading and listening to it, that this doesn't work for me. Because the only way you can knock down your Goliath is with true action. Again, family, I truly thank you for this opportunity. For everyone that's tuned in, for everyone that's subscribed, for everyone that is just really taking the time to give me time, something that they'll never get back. I hope today moved you. Really, that story about the monkey that was actually by Barry. I hope that that particular story helps you too when people are trying to hold you back. Because that book, you should pick it up too. It's 99 Inspiring Stories for Presentations by Barry Powell. This has been your boy ED. This has been another Impact Secret podcast show. I hope this was a banger. I think I want to push this to my number one. I'm actually going to go back and listen to it for me to get inspired to take some action on some things I'm looking now on my expected win board. Until next time, peace.